All right, so our last couple of speakers happen to have been in the same PhD class at Stanford. And first up, we're going to have Tasso, who's going to talk about Aster Data. So it's going to be a little bit of a change of pace or angle. So this event is as much about the products and the technology as it is about entrepreneurship and stories of entrepreneurial success. And Tasso has had a lot of the latter. So I asked him to basically tell the story of Aster Data, which was one of the early big successes from a venture and entrepreneurial standpoint in the world of big data.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. So, as Matt said, this will be less of a pitch of the Aster product and more of a story of how we came to be what we became to be. I'll start with a little bit of background about myself. I was from Greece. Started PhD from Stanford, didn't finish, started Aster Data back in 2005. I was the founder, CTO, did a lot of different jobs. We sold the company to Teradata in 2011, and then I ran the company as a division with my co-founder for a couple of years. We had very strong growth both before and after the acquisition, which is rarely the case, but we're very happy with that. I'm also the founder of a big data incubator in the Valley called Data Elite. Those of you that are interested can check it out. I've invested, advised in different startups, and I moved to New York City from San Francisco in 2013, partly because I ran out of new restaurants to try, but also because of the diversity and the appeal of living in the great city of New York. So a little bit, just a couple of slides about our technology before going back to history. What Aster is, it's an MPP product, right? And the simplest way I guess to describe it in half a slide is kind of a hybrid between a database system and Hadoop, right? So if you think about Hadoop as more unstructured, deeper analytics, and the database are more structured SQL, we wanted to provide Hadoop-like analytical power to traditional enterprise users. But mind you, we were thinking about this problem back in 2005, right? So that was pre-Hadoop, but that kind of the simpler things, the simpler way to describe it. Those of you that are interested and want to go more technical, we had a paper in VLDB 2009 that kind of describes one of the key technologies really well, which is SQL MapReduce, which is kind of the marriage we achieved between a declarative language of SQL, right, and the procedural language of MapReduce, which usually don't go together very well, but we found a really cool, neat way to do it. We call this SQL MapReduce. The product has evolved a lot over the past few years. We're at version 6 right now, and what we have is a system that can accommodate both relational and file store in the same system, in the same architecture, and a number of analytical engines, including a SQL relational engine, a SQL MapReduce, a SQL graph, which allows you to do very large scale graph analytics while staying within a SQL interface, is really, really cool technology. But as I said before, we won't go very deep on that. For those of you that are interested, read the paper, the VLDB, go to our website, lots of information there. I want to talk more about how we got started and how we reached this point. So this is kind of the evolution of Aster, right? We started in 2005, 3 founders, 2008, 2010, 2013. And we were like and excited that every 2 to 3 years, we were dealing with a company that was, an order of magnitude different in size, or at least a big multiple different in size. And that was really a very, very exciting thing. It never felt we were working the same company from 1 year to the next year. These are the 3 founders in an embarrassing moment. As you can see, we were having a lot of fun. This is our first outing. HR didn't disallow alcohol in the workplace back then. That changed later. We very quickly after starting the business, we started, we were scrambling to find new customers. And it's really serendipity, right, that brought us to our new customers. The person you see on the left was a Stanford professor, Rajiv Motwani. Unfortunately, he passed away in a tragic accident some time ago. But he introduced us to our first prospect, which was Right Media, Brian O'Kelly. Today, He was the founder and CEO of AppNexus. And also through Ron Conway, we reached Adam Bain, who was the CTO of MySpace back then. Today he runs sales for Twitter. And Right Media never became our customer, and that's a different story, but MySpace did become a very big customer of ours. And that was back in 2007, where MySpace, was at the height where probably Facebook is today. So really, we benefited a lot from the help of a lot of people. Rajiv in particular never asked anything in return for all the help and the introductions that he gave us. And at the same time, we were very, very strict about being low budget. As you can obviously see, we designed our own business cards. Who else would put a pink flower on a business card? And this is actually when we were visiting New York for customers, this is a view of our hotel. I think we succeeded to find the cheapest motel in the 5 boroughs of New York with this wonderful view. I think it has by far, this was the neighborhood, the highest crime rate, at least at the time. Now it's probably gentrified with a lot of stylish people living there. And what I found very interesting thinking about the time is that, it was like the first couple of years of the company was so exciting because we could decide everything, right? We could go left or we could go right. And we had a thirst. We had our first advisor, investors, customers, executives, partners. And what really, in retrospect makes me I found very interesting is how much these first choices influence where we ended up as a company. The requirements of our first customer really define what we grew up to be as a product and as a company. The character of our first employee helped define the culture of the company. Our first investor helped define our strategy. And, back then we didn't think about it, but in retrospect, that first asset of everything is so critical so that if it's not aligned with your vision, it's not aligned with the company's vision where you want to go, you really need to make a change very, very quickly. Because once you set to a direction, it's just very, very hard to shift afterwards. So, after having that, we work very hard, right? We start from scratch, build the product. We worked crazy hours, very high bar. We got customers. We got, to production, our first production customer, a lot of surprises. Actually, I remember anecdotally, our first investor, when we shipped the product, he asked us, how many bugs did you find? And I made the impossible statement and said, our product has 0 bugs. Now, how many of you believe that? Well, soon thereafter, we realized that the product did have a number of bugs. It was greater than 0. And we realized that, the only way to have 0 bugs is if you don't have a QA process, which we didn't. But, again, we were young and we were learning as we were going. The key thing is that we learned very quickly from our mistakes, and we worked extremely hard to correct our mistakes. So we grew in 2007. And, the other thing that's interesting is that every year we thought this was the big year, and if we could only work hard for a year, then it would be smooth sailing. But no, it was even more work. Then we had to raise Series A, grow revenue, grow customers, get stuff done, right? We went from a point of having proved the concepts to really having to execute really, really hard. And, we grew even further the team, right? And at that point, we were a really, really big family. It really felt a very, very different company than what it was even a year ago and definitely 2 or 3 years ago. So one thing that I find interesting about this stage of a company, and it's something that, those of you here that are founders or want to become founders, or those of you that sit on the other side of the table and are looking at kind of early startups, I think the product market fit is everything, right? The number one job a founder has is to find the product market fit. Now, what does this mean? Product market fit means you have identified a unique, unmet customer need that's large enough to sustain your company, right? At least take it to $50 or $100 million. And you have a product that can repeatedly and productively sold to satisfy that need. Now, there's a lot of underlying words here. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go into everything. But I will tell you that if what you have is something that the founder has to go in and you need to hack a solution for the customer, or you need to have the founder in the room to sell the product, that's not a product market fit, right? And that means that you either need to find it or you need to change it to something else that can scale much, much better. And why is this a founder's problem? It is because only the founder has a very deep technology understanding and a very, very deep market understanding at the same time, right? Engineers lack the market understanding, sales lack the technology understanding. This is really, really a very, very hard job. And you really need to be in this iterative process and just keep working on it until you find it. Only when you find it, you should invest the money to truly scale up the company. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste of time and resources. So after we had our product market fit, right, we raised Series B with another 17 million. I think we raised between 50 and 60 million in total. I mean, building infrastructure is really expensive and takes time. We grew sales, mature product, and we hired, all these people that would come in with experience to help us build up the product. But I want to take a parenthesis because we talk a lot about big data. So I want to talk a little bit about big data and how we found ourselves in the middle of that, right? I really don't know who came up with the term big data. I don't know who used it first. I do know Aster was one of the first companies that we use it as our major positioning statement. And I do believe we had the first big data event. Although I may be wrong, but nobody has told me otherwise so far. So as you can see here, right, big data happened really in 2010, right? That's when it happened, at least in the technology community. And from 2011, it really took off at a completely different level on the business level. And why, how did big data happen? It's all about positioning. Okay, what does that mean? Product positioning should be a reflection of three things. It's where the company is going, what's the company vision, what are the product capabilities, and where do you focus from a market perspective. And I want to help you to walk back on how we evolve the product positioning to help you understand why product positioning is so important and why it's such a hard problem for technology companies. So if you look at our position versus the competition, we had a few competitors back then, right? It didn't matter who they were. But we had a couple of people that were trying to be a faster data warehouse. And we had some other people that were trying to be a cheaper data warehouse, right? And then the question is, okay, these guys are faster, these guys are cheaper. What are you guys, right? And data warehouse back then was really the dominant term in data. It's like, what big data is today or what data discovery may be today. So if you thought about where Aster was going, we had a vision that was very different. Our vision was to dramatically expand what people could do with SQL database while maintaining capabilities at a huge scale, huge data scale. The product could do a lot of interesting things, right, including SQL MapReduce. And we were targeting really the business users that want to gain competitive advantage by doing more analytics. That's what we wanted to do, right? And, I would say that in retrospect, we had the right intuition, which is that if we were a yet another data warehouse, we will lose all differentiation because then people will be like, oh, you guys are another data warehouse. Are you faster or are you cheaper? And we wanted to compete on a completely different level, right? Capabilities, business advantage, business solution, etc. However, that's harder than what it sounds. Why? I mean, on the one hand, you can position yourself as whatever you want, but you also want to call yourself something that people are looking for and have budgets for, right? And that was the big thing. Do you call yourself what everyone else is calling themselves, but then you get lost in the noise and you don't really communicate the value? Or do you call yourself this shiny new thing that nobody knows what it is? So if you see what we did, we went through a number of iterations. The best one when we were in stealth mode. We didn't have to say anything to anybody. That was really, it's like, being a child. You didn't have to care about anything. In 2007, we had the brilliant idea of coming out with a SQL MapReduce as our positioning. And of course, nobody knew what MapReduce back then, right? I mean, things was before any of that stuff. So we would walk into meetings And people will say, okay, what are you guys? And we're like, we're a SQL MapReduce engine. It's like, okay, what's MapReduce? Oh, it's this really cool thing, has a map function, reduce function, you lost the customer, okay? Very different thing today, right, where MapReduce is so popular. But today, of course, that position will have different problems. Then we decided to call ourselves an analytical database. That was kind of okay, but the problem is nobody knew what was the difference between an analytical database and a regular database, right? And they had to explain it, and then you go back to SQL MapReduce, so that didn't go very far. So then in 2009, very, very early on, we decided to grab on ourselves onto big data, right? It was really a name for a new market. And big data is an interesting positioning statement because it's more aspirational, but it communicates a few very key things. It communicates that this is a new era. It's a new market, new data requirements that requires new technology. It communicates that we bring web-scale technology to your own data center, right, which is something a lot of enterprises wanted to do. It communicates that you shouldn't worry so much about performance and cost, right? What you should worry is how you will compete with all these next-generation companies that are disrupting your business. So this was really something that really caught on. And, we had one of the first big data summits. It was actually out here in New York. We positioned outside big data. And we got a ton of credit. If you see at Gartner, they positioned Aster way on the right, which is kind of the visionary position, which is where you want to be as a startup. Today, we kind of merged with Teradata, so we're kind of the leader of the quadrant in some ways. But this was the last quadrant we appeared on. So a really, really good positioning, good messaging. Of course, since then, we've moved on, right? We use big data a lot less because big data has lost a lot of the benefit it had for us back in 2009. If you want to see our new positioning, please visit our website. That's my indirect sales nudge. So, and in 2011, right, just to conclude the story, we became part of Teradata. And a lot of people say, why sell, right? And in some ways, we sold because we had to. I mean, big data happened, and when big data happened in 2010, we had maybe, about 100 employees, and all the big guys were jumping into this game. And the real question is, right, do you want to keep playing ball in a space where you would be out-budgeted by at least a factor of 10, right? Because everybody was jumping in at the same time. And we realized that the only way to realize what the product and the company, the vision, what it could offer, was to align with a major player. So we chose Teradata, right? Because in some ways, if you think about it, Teradata is the largest data analytics specialist. That's how I think of them. They do data analytics, data warehousing, and that's all they do. And they can make a large amount of money, and they have a lot of people thinking only about one thing. So we wanted to be in an environment like that. The market vision was a good fit. The product portfolio was a good fit. The sales channel could understand and sell Aster, which actually, believe it or not, is a very non-trivial thing. And, we had the same opinion about what the price of the company, what the value of the company would be. So that kind of closed a big circle. So just to give like a couple of closing thoughts, right? If I had to think of one thing, is how important timing is in everything that happens. We knew big data would happen. I mean, we didn't know it would be called big data, but we knew data was underappreciated because we were in the middle of where the revolution started, right? I mean, my advisor at Stanford was the first investor at Google, right? And we were right in the center of where all this technology was being generated. But we didn't know when. And in retrospect, timing could have completely changed the fate of the company, right? So maybe big data had happened a lot earlier. Maybe we would have been lost in the noise. If we had another 2 years without everybody going crazy about big data, right, maybe we would have grown to the point where we would go public. Or maybe I'm completely wrong, right? I mean, who knows? The point is, timing matters, and you cannot control timing as an entrepreneur. The only thing you can control is your technology and your team, right? If you have a truly solid technology, and if you have a truly solid team, is the only insurance you can ever have against the market, right? Which is unpredictable timing and unpredictable events. So that's all I had. So I think we can take some questions.
Well, thank you very much. We can take one question. If there's one, and if there's not, then it'll be even better, because then we can move on to the last one.
We're probably
There's
running
one
a little bit late.
Yes.
Hi, Stephen Benario at Euphora. You said that a good indication of product market fit is when you know that the founders aren't required for sales. Could it just mean that the other people you've got doing sales aren't necessarily that good at sales, because maybe they started out in some other capacity? Or is that really like an actual indicator for you that that's the thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm assuming you're not hiring. I'm assuming some level of competency in hiring the right people when I said that. The point is, a lot of things could go wrong, right? So if you can't get the sales that you need, maybe you haven't found product market fit, or maybe your VP of sales is completely incompetent. Both could happen. But the point is, even with the best VP of sales, if you don't have product market fit, you won't be able to be successful. And that's why you first have to find this and then invest in finding that amazing sales guy that you think can take your product to tens or hundreds of millions of dollars.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.